And aloha and welcome to the Pearl Harbor Aviation Museum's webinar. Our museum is located on Ford Island in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. Our site is the first aviation battlefield of World War II. Our mission here at the museum is to share the stories, the impact, and the response to the attack on Pearl Harbor that happened on December 7th, 1941, and to the battles that followed in the Pacific region. Our webinars started in response to the stay-at-home and shelter-in-place orders due to this global pandemic. It's our hope here at the museum that we can continue to educate and inspire future generations despite our physical space being closed. So our work to do this cannot happen unless we have featured speakers that we've been so fortunate to have so far. So today we are joined by Tammie Jo Shults, a veteran Navy fighter pilot and current captain for Southwest Airlines. She is widely recognized and commended for the safe landing of Flight 1380, which experienced an engine failure just 20 minutes into their routine flight. So Tammie Jo, we just want to welcome you here today and thank you for the pivotal role that your military service played in furthering women in aviation. We especially thank you for taking the time to be with us to share your story and your wisdom.
Well, thank you, Monica, for the invitation.
We also have some educators from the museum here that work behind the scenes to make our programs possible. Without them, our webinars wouldn't even be possible to share with all of you. So we have Ford, Eric, Melissa, and Ashley, and they help monitor our chat and they answer questions you might have as we go along. So also, Ashley will share some educational resources with you towards the end of the program. Please add your questions for Captain Shults to the question and answer and to the comments and your comments can be added to our chat during the program. Our last few webinars, we've had attendees from all over the world, some as far as Canada, New Zealand, and Japan. So we love to know where people are coming from. So please add your home state or your home country to our chat. So also, I want to remind you to be thoughtful and kind when you add your comments and questions. So today I'd like to start out with a video just to give our viewers some understanding of what transpired on Flight 1380 2 years ago in April 2018. So I'm going to switch screens and show you a video clip of that. So please stand by.
Southwest 1380 has an engine fire descending.
I understand your emergency. Let me know when you want to go in.
Yeah, we have a part of the aircraft that you feel we're going to need to slow down a bit.
Southwest 1380, speed is your discretion. Maintain at any altitude above 3,000 feet, and you let me know when you want to turn base.
Okay, could you have the medical meet us there on the runway as well? We've got injured passengers.
Injured passengers, okay, and is your airplane
Sorry about that to our viewers. It appears that we dropped off for a second there. It seems with the use of the internet lately by so many people that this seems to be happening more often than we would like. So I'm so sorry about that, but we're gonna go ahead and try to show you that video, and we'll start where we left off.
Landing with Flight 1380.
If you look at the left edge to the right of your screen, you can see some visible damage there.
As one of the first women to fly Navy fighter jets, Tammie Jo Shults had exactly the kind of training for just this kind of emergency. Unflappable and deliberate, guiding her crippled jet in for a landing.
We landed. We're safe.
The lady that was our pilot is a Navy veteran.
She has nerves of steel. That lady, I applaud her. She was awesome. The crew was awesome.
So Captain Shults, your success on the landing flight 1380 was due to a lifetime of choices and preparation. We're so grateful to have you on our program today and listen to some of your insights and to what gave you that foundation so that you could react so calmly and with such care. So I wanted to start off the interview with you today with you telling us a little bit about your childhood and where you grew up.
Well, I grew up, thank you, Monica, very much. And I grew up in southern New Mexico. We spent a few years in southern Colorado, but most of my childhood was in Tularosa, New Mexico. And my dad and my family had a pig and cattle farm and ranch. We also had a few hundred acres in alfalfa and milo, and so we grew up outdoors quite a bit. It was a family effort to get everything done in the day.
Well, when growing up on a farm, I imagine that that you weren't exposed much to aviation. So when did you first realize that you wanted to be a pilot, and how old were you?
I was probably going into junior high. The Air Force base that was across the boondocks by about 30 miles as the crow flies, they were doing fighter lead-in training. And so they would need a ground reference point to do their dogfighting practice over. And our big hay barn was their anchor, it seemed like. So we had a daily air show. And I was usually mucking out stalls or stock trailers of organic fertilizer. And it just looked a lot more fun than what I was doing at the time. And so then I started reading. I got books that I could find on aviation and came across the book Jungle Pilot about Nate Saint. And I could kind of see two things. First of all, I felt like I got to get behind a pilot's eyes to see from a cockpit view, what aviation was like. I didn't know any pilots to talk to, so I was reading books, and also I saw how he went about getting into aviation, because he sprang from about as much cash flow in his family as what I did in mine. And I knew that I just didn't have the money to step out into flight lessons. And so I saw how he served his country, got his foot into aviation that way. And so that was really my introduction into aviation. And it was from afar. I hadn't yet touched an airplane or met a pilot.
Now, I'm wondering about your family. So you were with your family when you were growing up on the farm, and you've often said that it was your foundation and that helped shape those values that brought about success later in life. Can you share some of the values you felt you got from your upbringing?
Sure. I think we all spring from a foundation. In aviation, everything that flies launches from a foundation, whether it's rockets from a launch pad, aircraft from a runway, or birds from a branch. And we all, as people, we launch into life from the foundation of home and some of the choices that we have made. Even as young as 17 or 18, we don't have a choice in our home. Mine was fortunate in that you wouldn't see a silver spoon looking in at my childhood, but you would definitely see a silver lining of love if you were on the inside of my childhood looking out. So I had that. I had a family that cherished me. And going into high school, I went to a church camp for the first time, and going through James, whenever I came across the scripture that said, if you lack wisdom, ask me. I will give it to you generously and not resent you asking. And I thought, okay, that angry bearded old man in the sky waiting for me to mess up is the wrong image of God. And that image got replaced with a young man who walks the same earth that I'm walking. And he wasn't angry at me, he was crazy about me. And that makes a big difference. What we believe in And I realized there's lots of different choices in our faiths. You know, everybody will seek out and find their own. But having that foundation of a family that cherished me and a faith that assured me there are no second-class citizens. And so that way, whenever I looked out at the world to think, what do I want to do? What do I want to become in life? I just dreamed without fences. And that was also, I would have to add, growing up in a family where I do not remember not having chores. It was just part of life. And the wisdom of my parents giving me the authority along with the responsibility whenever I was given chores and things to do. It just made me realize there's a real joy in hard work and doing the most menial task well. And those are great lessons that I was privileged to learn at home.
Those really resonated with me when I was reading through your book, and it just really showed that the love and support of your family, plus the hard work that you had to do, helped you to overcome some of the challenges that you faced. It seems like you had to deal with many rejections along the way. And so I wanted to share with our viewers part of your book. Luckily, you have recorded readings from your book, and I wanted to share part of the chapter 7 with them, just so they can hear a little bit of the story that you've written about it. So if you don't mind, we'll jump over to this video.
And it's chapter 7, The Dream That Wouldn't Die. My parents had moved to Roswell, New Mexico, a town carved out of dirt and sand by wind, because Sandra needed to attend a specialized school located there. I didn't know what else to do with my life. So when I finished college, I packed up and went with them. I got a job interview with a large agricultural company in Iowa. They offered to pay for a plane ticket for me, but I asked the hiring manager if I could have the money for an airplane rental and an instructor instead. To my surprise, he said yes. So I found an instructor and rented a single-engine Cessna to take me to my interview. It took quite a while to reach our destination in that small plane, flying from New Mexico to Iowa. On the way, the instructor talked to me about flying as I enjoyed the view from above the clouds, a little slower and a little lower than it had been on my trip to Washington, D.C. In Iowa, it turned out the job offer was to feed pigs. Pig farming is honest work. My dad had been a pig farmer, among other things, and I'd done that enough myself to be qualified. I said I'd consider it. On the way home, the instructor stopped talking for a while as we flew back over the Great Plains of Kansas. I felt the steady thrum of the engine matching my own breathing. By the time we glimpsed the majestic mountains east of Santa Fe, I knew I couldn't go back to feeding pigs. I would keep looking. In Roswell, I was a substitute teacher while I looked for a full-time job. Excuse me. Days of job searching turned into weeks, then months, then a year. I was a little surprised to discover that my dreams weren't going to take flight right away. In the meantime, I worked a couple of jobs and tried to be helpful at home. This wasn't what I had planned, but I enjoyed the time with my family. During that time, I signed up for flight lessons. Perhaps I was imagining that flying was better than it really was. I thought that if I put in the hard work of actually learning to fly, it would help.
Well, I feel like that clip really resonates with a lot of people that might think that they're living in a life that they can't even imagine a career such as flying or being an aviator. So I think that resonates with them. So what do you think helped you to go from a life that was not the same as where your career ended up? How did you do that, and what do you think helped you along the way?
You know, one of the things that I think was key in this was being practical. I at the end of that chapter, I don't know if it goes into it in the young reader, but I realized that I was, I was working 2 or 3 jobs and not getting anywhere. I was interviewing for jobs in my field of expertise from college, not getting any. And economics can drive us towards a good path. I realized I am not going to be able to continue. This is an expensive hobby. I need a career. I need a job. And so economics is a great motivator. And economics is why I decided it has to be military flying. That's the only way I'll ever learn to fly. I was excited to do that just because that's what I had seen in aviation to begin with. I was willing to fly anything, but that was my only path. So it made me dig in when it wasn't pleasant, when I got my head shaved and looked so bad that even my parents said, please don't send another picture till you grow some hair. And you're getting yelled at, or you're studying all night long, because I never cracked a book that said the word aerodynamics until I got into the Navy. So I had to study with a dictionary sitting right beside my books. And when there's just tough, gutted through work to be done, sometimes if you have that drive of, this is the only way I can do this, I'm going to have to dig in and put up with some ugly behavior. One of the biggest lessons that I learned in the Navy, and I think you can learn it anywhere you are, is never let an offense get in the way of a great opportunity. I just have to say that is in the Navy, when they would say something important that was going to be on the test or that you would need, they'd stomp on the floor. Well, if you were close by, you'd see, I'm stomping on the floor. That is important. And it doesn't really matter who you are, what field you want to go into, there will always be fences. And a lot of times there will be people holding those fences up. You just have to figure out a way to get around, over, under, through that fence.
So definitely we're thankful for people like you who were the first to kind of open that door for people. And I wanted to share one of the photographs that I found of you and some of your fellow aviators when you began your career. So I want to show the viewers that picture. So I'm going to share that with them.
Okay.
So can you tell us a little bit about your early flight training in the Navy?
Sure. I went in, and at that time we were flying T-34s, everyone, for flight training. And then if you selected helicopters or airplanes, you went a different route. I got selected for jets, so I went to Beeville, Texas, and flew the T-2 Buckeye, and then on to the A4 Skyhawk. I have to say, the A4 Skyhawk, that was advanced jet training. And up to that point, we'd flown training aircraft. The A4 was not built as a trainer. It was a sleek delta wing light attack built for the fleet. So it was wonderfully nimble, but formidable. And we did some great maneuvers in that. But after that, I went back and taught for 2 years in the T2. My last year, I did a lot of out of control flight instructing, and then went on to fly A7s in my fleet squadron in the Navy, which was way ahead of their time, really. There were no other squadrons in the Army or the Air Force or the Marine Corps where women could fly combat aircraft. Now, we didn't fly them in a combat squadron. This
Right, it seems like we might have lost Tammie Jo, or we've lost my connection. So let me see what's happening.
To fly alongside, fly in formation, study with. at different times. Pam and I were sent through A7 weapons, which women hadn't done before. And so we walked and talked through our weapons training, but you never go through something by yourself. And the doors that each lady, like Sue on the left, she's flying 777s now, mostly through Asia for FedEx. Brenda Shifley, she's up near New York and is continuing. I think she's on her 3rd master's degree. She's just one of those brainiacs. And Pam has recently retired from the Navy as a captain and started flying for United. But having people to walk through life with and keep a good sense of humor. And I also have to point out that while all of us at that time, at different times, pushed different doors open, Pam and Brenda both were the first ladies in the fleet to fly F-18s. There were men on the other side of those doors that unlocked them for us. So I think it kind of proves we've always worked best when we work together.
So I think that's a nice bridge to tell us, if you could, about your military to civilian transition. So.
Yeah, well, the summer that I got out of the Navy, I actually flew a little O2 over forest fires that summer, the next 6 months. And it was what they call the air attack position. And I carried a forest ranger in my right seat. He coordinated the ground troops. I coordinated the airplanes and helicopter drops in the canyons. We'd run through the canyon ahead of them to check for winds and temperatures. And anyway, that was a fun transition. Then I started with Southwest Airlines 26 years ago, and it was a different culture. Aviation is aviation, but certainly I was flying into different fields. There's different regulations and policies and procedures in every different group that you will fly with. And so coming to Southwest, it was actually a bit of a rough time at that time in aviation period. There was so many big changes that had happened in aviation for women specifically. And so anytime there's changes, there's going to be some people that feel like, they're kind of getting petted with their fur backwards, and it doesn't set well. So as a new first officer, sometimes I kind of got an earful about how someone felt about women being allowed into combat squadrons. And there's just a little mini culture war going on there. It has settled a bit. So life is certainly not as turbulent as what it was then. But the 737, it was a great aircraft to learn to fly a heavier, bigger aircraft in. And I'm 26 years later, I'm still enjoying flying my 737s.
What do you think that you learned from the military training that has helped you in the civilian flying role that you have now?
Well, those one lesson I alluded to, life lessons, is leadership sets the tone. It really doesn't matter, even if you're in charge of a coffee pot, how you do it will influence others. And so getting to experience some great leadership in the Navy, and some that was not great. I would go ahead and say some that was bad leadership. You learn from both. And we've all had that. It doesn't matter whether you're in the Navy, civilian life. We've all seen great leaders and leaders that you take notes, like, okay, I will not do that. And so I think, honestly, that gave me some great insight into, learning, not only learning your craft, but getting to know your people, because you have to know your people in order to value them and trust what they have to say. We can't know everything. I don't need to, as the captain, do everybody's job or know everybody's job. I need to know the overarching goal and make sure everybody has what they need to do their job, and empower them. When they have the responsibility, they have the authority to get those things done. So I learned that in the Navy, as well as really some of the way that my mom and dad were such servant leaders at home, that I had some good examples at home to back that up with too. And then not letting offenses become a block in my path. You know, we all get offended by something sometime. Keep moving. Don't let that get in the way of a great opportunity. And also in aviation, my goodness, my assignment to fly out of control flights, to instruct that for a year, that was really assigned to me as a put down. I was pulled from the guns lineup after a change of command. The new skipper said, I will not have a woman teaching guns in my Navy. And it was what everybody loved to teach and to fly. And I got pulled and sent to teach what nobody wanted to fly, their one required flight of taking the aircraft up to 30,000 feet, departing it, and then the student recovering it. If he didn't, then I recovered it. We climbed back up, did it again about 10 times. And I would usually become familiar with what they had for breakfast or lunch somewhere during the flight. And so that was incredible training as an aggressor pilot in my next assignments, and then as a Boeing pilot on one specific day.
Yes, that's exactly what I was thinking. You spoke earlier of silver lining. So even when assigned what was considered the worst job, it actually became one that ended up saving lives. So there is silver lining in everything.
It's interesting because sometimes we have to realize that those assignments, they're really not about us. They're so often in our adventures in life, when we hit those adversities, the training and the grooming that grows us wiser rather than just growing up, they're not just for our benefit. And it may be years before you realize that.
That's right. So definitely time and belief in that the answer will come is something that persists, isn't it? I have one more question that I want to ask, but we are just getting tons of questions from our viewers. So I do want to turn it over to them. But my final question is that you've had a career in the Navy. You've had 26 years, you said, at Southwest Airlines. So what does the future hold for you as an aviator?
Well, I still have years to go flying 737s. I still fly for Southwest Airlines. And my husband and I have a Piper Malibu that we enjoy, but he has already finished his application, and I'm finishing mine to fly for Angel Flight, so that we can put our airplane and our skills to good use when we're not flying for Southwest Airlines. And then I also still coach javelin for the kids here in town and kind of in the community. And I have some other volunteer jobs here within my little community that I enjoy.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Captain Shults. I do have a bunch of questions that I need to ask from our viewers. So,
all right.
I wanted to ask a few first questions about the Flight 1380. So we had a question from Eric, and he was asking, will Southwest ever put the plane from Flight 1380 back in service?
No.
All right.
To my knowledge, but
okay.
I'm not really on that decision level.
No, I think that's an answer that would, it's good for, hopefully good for Eric. Our next question about the Flight 1380 is from Layla. So she was asking, how did you concentrate in order to safely land the plane? So didn't the noises and alarms and screaming bother you? Sometimes when I'm working on my schoolwork, all the outside noise bothers me and I can't concentrate. So how did you concentrate?
I will tell you, I didn't even hear a lot of the noises because I focused. There was a lot that needed my attention. And one of the trainings that all pilots go through is what we call compartmentalization. And that is realizing that when you sit down in the cockpit, if your dog is sick, if your kids are taking a test, if your mom is coming to visit, it doesn't matter. Your whole world is right there. And that's all you need to think about. And that gives more of your brain to wrap around your flying. And I do understand what you're talking about, getting distracted when you're trying to study. There's two things that I would tell you. Whenever I study, because I still study I still study my systems, my emergency procedures. We have a once a year check ride that lasts like 4 days. So I still study myself, and I put on some good classical music. Schubert is usually my choice because he's kind of zippy without words, and that honestly kind of gives my brain a wavelength to keep riding on and not get distracted and not start daydreaming, and I can focus better. But at that time in 1380, I was really so focused. We have a tendency as humans, when things are going wrong, we can get tunnel vision. And so I don't know if it was a combination of tunnel vision or sincere and dedicated focus that kept those things out of the way of my mind. And it wasn't until I went back to listen to the tapes, the cockpit tapes, that I realized there were bells and whistles going off all the way down final. And I thought it was silent. I had no idea there were any whistles or bells going on as I was in my final approach. So I think that's an extreme case of focusing. For your homework, put on some music that drowns everything else out. Music without words, so your mind's not worried about that, but it'll keep your mind moving and not daydreaming.
I think that you actually answered another question from, there was a viewer, her name is Katrina, and she was asking how you manage stressful situations and if you had some suggestions for dealing with it. But I think that you gave the music example to help with the homework. Did you have any other examples of dealing with stressful situations that you might want to add?
Well, I will say that if you've read my book, you'll know that when I was young, I definitely stressed out. As a first or second grader, I wound up in the hospital because I got vertigo so bad every time there was a test at school. And my parents finally thought, okay, well, let's figure this out. And the doctor, his prognosis was, oh, she's spoiled and she just does not have the temperament to handle life. She just can't handle stress. So you'll need to put her on tranquilizers. And my parents, partly just from wisdom and partly out of economics, they didn't have insurance and they didn't have the money to do tranquilizers the rest of my life. Thank God above. And they just realized, I think he's misread her. She's not spoiled. We know that. So maybe his medical advice isn't as on target as it could be. And they decided we are going to just help her get her mind off herself, because you're getting wound up too much inside your own mind when you get too stressed out like that. And so if they saw me getting stressed out, they would just tell me, go get your jeans on. We need you to help us vaccinate whatever litter of pigs, or we need you to go swath whatever field. And it would kind of help me put life in perspective, get outside, get some sunshine, fresh air, and get my body in motion, do something physical.
This seems to be a question for many people. So we actually had Reagan W. She or he was asking what it was like flying under pressure, and Emily T. was asking, how were you so brave during that flight? So it's definitely dealing with stress and pressure is a theme of questions that a lot of people are asking right now. But
well, Monica, I think that's something in every path of life. We all face that. And I will say also, for me, my belief in God has helped a lot. I think about what we're going through right now with the COVID-19 shutdown. And one of the things that I'm encouraged by is just realizing you know, the idea that we are benched basically in life because of a fear of an invisible enemy. In truth, we have always faced invisible enemies, and we always will. But God tells us, I did not give you a spirit of fear or timidity. In 2 Timothy 1:7, he said, I gave you a spirit of power to live life in, that will give you love and self-control. And there's a whole list. Those are just the bookends. But, you know, I think he knew we would always face fears of one kind or another, and some of them invisible. So they're even scarier when they're invisible, I think. And that, you know, power and fear cannot coexist. It's like light and darkness. One dispels the other. And I think the neatest way, the most winsome way God has of pulling us off that bench of fear and onto our feet in life is through adventure. I think about Amelia Earhart's quote, adventure is worthwhile. And I think we're made for it. It's just what we need to put that spark in us. It's also a great way for us to learn, because every adventure will have adversity. And that's part of what grooms us and makes us ready for the next big challenge and the next adventure. And we rarely walk away from an adventure, even if it's a walk, a hike. We rarely walk away unchanged. In that time, we could just start to see the engine instruments winding down, and then we couldn't see anything. There was a big plume of smoke brought into the cockpit, presumably from the air conditioning system, and a cloud of condensation as well from the explosive decompression that had happened. And there was a roar that just smothered every sound. So that was all in the first second. And my mind, like everyone's, I think, was just pumped with adrenaline. And I thought, I'm not sure everything is going to stay on until we get this to a runway. We couldn't see anything because of the shuttering, which never stayed steady. It always changed and seemed to grow worse. And that thought process really took me with a speed train of thought to those mental cliffs of what if. And as I got there, I realized then this would be the day I meet my maker. And honestly, that is where I just stepped back from that cliff and I realized I won't be meeting a stranger. And I meet with him every day. And that's when I did feel I stepped away from that thought process with a calm and faced the other option, which was, we're still flying, time to get busy.
Wow, I know that was a lot of pressure in the moment, and that was very, very bold and courageous of you to keep your cool during that time. Do you have any advice about how to keep that kind of, that kind of mindset? I know you talked a lot about creating good habits and stuff like that. Could you talk more about that?
Sure. Habits on a good day become our instinct on a bad day. So through the years, we decide how we want to react to things. Things will startle us, yes, but we make a decision, and each decision we make on how we handle things, it just makes that mental and that muscle memory ingrained in us. And so having years of some responsibility and things going wrong. So just take heart. When things go wrong, it's great practice, because now you've had to deal with something that didn't do what it was supposed to. I'd had other emergencies in aircraft and emergencies on the ground, so when things go wrong, it's part of our training. And the habit of, what do you think about when things go wrong? Do you think about yourself? Because part of that is training. We always all think about ourselves first. I did, you know, like, okay, this may be the day I meet my maker. And then it made me realize, okay, that one's not a problem. Let's get back to the big picture here. And so what we take the time to make a habit, that becomes your instinct. That becomes your reaction you don't even have to think about. And that is such a safety net that we have. Animals, you know, they have instinct. Some of them have the instinct to run, you know, and if you've ever seen a deer head across a busy road, you realize that instinct of flight, it doesn't contain reason. We have that ability. So that everyday practice of just making a habit of taking your reactions into hand. And I've had bad reactions at times, and I looked at them and realized, okay, that could have been done better. And so the next time you do have a better reaction.
I think that's an amazing way to look at that, and a great way to approach life. We did have a few questions about further about Flight 1380, and
sure.
I believe you're allowed to talk about it since it's been so far after the investigation. Is that correct?
Yes, the report is out, and so we're free to speak about it openly.
Okay. Yeah, we do have a few questions from our younger viewers. Actually, they wanted to know what caused the engine to explode in the first place.
Sure, there was, you know, if you look into an engine, a jet engine, there are fan blades, and one of our fan blades had a molecular flaw. So it was nothing you could see with your eye. It was actually nothing you could see with a microscope. You would have to take the coating off of it to be able to see it, even with a microscope or an X-ray machine. So it was an anomaly that was there, that under that amount of stress, because they're just, you know, at 500 miles an hour, those blades are producing some serious thrust. And when that broke, that is what began that chain reaction of things. That hit a certain buckle on the cowling that caused it to peel back, kind of like a banana peel, and remain attached, and have big pieces fall off or fly off, and others hit the aircraft in different areas. But it was just that tiny molecular flaw in a fan blade.
Wow. It is amazing and incredible that you could think so quickly in such a situation.
Mm-hmm.
But I believe we're getting close to wrapping up now. I was going to share a few resources that were happily shared by you. Thank you so much for them. I'm just going to share my screen really quickly and show our viewers a few things that they can do to learn more about you, your career, and a few of the resources that you offer on your website. So I'm just going to share my screen really quickly. All right, so everyone, we have a few resources that are available for download as a PDF on our website. It's a few pages for everybody to get to know Captain Shults. And, you know, this first page, as we can see, is just a blurb with a few cool pictures from her service in the Navy. And then the next page is really what we want to highlight. We have Captain Shults' website and her social media. Next, we have other interviews if you'd like to know more about her and her life. And then next, we have if you'd like to know more about Flight 1380. I know we have a lot of questions about that, so you might want to check that out. And then next, we have a lot of viewers who are interested in aviation, and they come to us looking for resources about how to get started flying. They want to know what they can do. So you can take a look at these resources. They are also on Captain Shults' website. But these are all hot links, and they are clickable, and they'll take you right to the website. And then finally, we ourselves at the Pearl Harbor Aviation Museum have a few scholarship opportunities that we'd love for everyone to check out. So make your way over to our website. We do have these hot links at the bottom, and you can see what is available to you and how you can further yourself as a pilot or aviator. And then next, for our younger viewers, we do have a few coloring pages for you guys to print out of Captain Shults' planes that she has flown in her career, which is very cool and exciting. This being one of the last ones that we know about. But yeah, thank you. We're going to turn it over to Melissa next, and she's going to close us out for the day. Hi, Melissa.
Hi, guys. All right, so real quick before we leave, hey, one more thing we want to show you guys here. I'm just going to share my screen quick. If you are interested in pursuing a career in aviation, there is a page on our website. You can find it under Education Student Resources, where there are different links for helping you discover, like it says, your future in aviation. And the resources that Ashley just shared can be found on our website as well under Pearl Harbor at Home. And we just want to thank you, Captain Shults, for spending time with us today to give us insight into a career pathway of a successful aviator.
Wow, it is totally my treat. I can't wait to see the new aviators on their way.
Yes, we're looking forward to that too. And we want to thank our viewers for bearing with us today. And please remember to check out our website for any resources you're interested in viewing. And aloha and best wishes from the Pearl Harbor Aviation Museum.
Aloha.